Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode in our philosophical series. For those of you who are new around here, in this channel I have a separate playlist and series on philosophical topics, which are audio only, where I discuss some of the most intellectual ideas and try to discover the answers to the greatest philosophical questions of all time. And the topic for discussion for this video is free will versus determinism. So I recommend you all to put your headphones on, relax, get comfortable on your couch, and let's begin. First of all, let me explain this topic to you like a 5-year-old and begin with a very simple example which I usually give to all my friends. So I'm pretty sure at some point in your life you all have heard of this game GTA, Grand Theft Auto, or you might have played it. Earlier it was Vice City, San Andreas, and now GTA 5 and all. So in the GTA game basically there is a main character, and then the main character is running around doing missions and all sorts of stuff, and then there are a few NPCs in the game. Now what are NPCs? NPCs means the non-playable characters. For example, when you walk around the street with your main character, there are other characters also walking around. Those are NPCs. Those are non-playable characters basically. So this example is very easy to understand this whole concept of free will versus the determinism, because the NPCs basically are predetermined. They have a fixed destiny, they have something fixed to do every day. For example, in the game itself, suppose you have a mission. So I remember particularly that there used to be a gun shop in the game when I used to play this game earlier. And in that gun shop there used to be a guy. Now he is a NPC, right? Like most people in life today. But anyways, so once you go inside that shop as you the main character, that guy's dialogue is always fixed. He always acts the same way. He's always there. No matter the time of the day, no matter when you go, no matter what you do, his dialogue remains the same, his actions remain the same, because they are predetermined, they are pre-programmed. So that is NPC. On the other hand, you have free will to do anything in game. Apart from doing missions also, you can go anywhere, you can roam around, you can jump around, you can do anything. So that is the whole discussion in which today we are going to get into, which is free will versus predetermined outcomes. Now this free will debate has been in discussion for ages. Great philosophers such as Nietzsche, Socrates, and Descartes had their own opinion on this too. Nietzsche was particularly the guy who did not believe in free will. Nietzsche argued that the concept of free will was introduced to punish and control people, particularly in moral and religious systems, because he believed that the idea of free will would lead to guilt and the judgment of individuals, attributing to all their wrongful actions to an internal and self-controlled will. On the other hand, Descartes believed in free will and raised an interesting observation. But first, Descartes also acknowledged that God's omniscience and omnipotence would raise questions about free will. Because if God knows everything in advance, then how come humans can truly be free? Because if he knows everything in advance, that means everything is predestined and pre-written. But when he concluded that God's foreknowledge does not interfere with human freedom, humans act according to their own will, even if God knows the outcomes, because God is capable of following through parallel worlds with different realities. Now let's understand the moral implications and societal accountability of free will. You need to understand something, that responsibility comes from free will. Responsibility comes from believing in free will. Otherwise, if everyone believed that determinism was the ultimate truth, then no one would care about any kind of moral obligation and our human society would collapse. Because everyone would say that anything and everything which is happening is not because of them, but because it was predetermined, and that would result in no accountability at all. You see, our society functions and governs its laws believing in free will as a given. It is almost a given that free will is there and everyone has their own choices, and that's why we can hold them accountable. Otherwise, it would make no sense to hold anyone accountable, because they are basically not responsible for it if predeterminacy was the case. Because on a wider scale of society, A part of why we respect others' decisions is because we assume that they have free will and they make their own wise and conscious decision. So part of giving respect to another human itself means that we have a given that they have free will, or else we would just imply that they are insane or mentally ill and cannot be held responsible for their actions as free will doesn't exist. It's like when you see someone who is in jail, you understand that at some point he made a bad decision and he went to jail for it. But if you go through the person's whole life, their childhood, the horrific traumas, all the abuse they have suffered in society, in the system, all the tragic events, so it means that it's not a free will issue entirely. There are a lot of variables there, many external factors there. Apart from his own self decisions, also there were many factors which affected his whole life series. So I think it's wise to believe that it's a mix of both. We also have free will to make some important decisions on our own, but we also have predetermined things in life which are out of our control, also called as luck or accidents. An easy to understand example would be that after a certain age your height doesn't increase, but your weight keeps on changing, right? So let's say you weigh 200 pounds. So that's not your destiny, because you can still change it if you consciously decide to. You don't have to predeterminedly live with it. You still have free will to make a change and change your weight. So now that we have a much fair idea now, let's move to some other famous arguments around this topic. And I'm not going to answer or try to answer these arguments, but I would just present them to you for you to make your own judgments based on which you think ideally is more nearest to the truth. You should pursue that. Some scientists and philosophers believe that if determinism is the only thing, then we cannot morally hold anyone accountable for their actions because their actions were predetermined. But then, isn't their punishment also itself predetermined? See, it's a multi-order of thinking if you can understand it. It goes beyond level 1 of predetermined events. And till what order can we track these events down? Because if their actions was predetermined, then their punishment had to be also predetermined in order to follow a logical chain of events. Okay, I think that argument is for you to understand. Let's move to the second argument. Philosopher Daniel Denner puts it really well. He said that just because everything is caused doesn't mean everything is controlled. So as long as I can make unhindered decisions for myself, that means I still have free will. But when Christopher Hitchens was asked that does he believe in free will, he said, I have no choice. Right? So does this mean that determinism comes with a fake sense of free will, where we think and have an illusion of choosing something, but in fact it was already chosen and we are just the predetermined event unraveling itself? Think about it. Heavy stuff, dude, but bear with me. It's about to get crazier. And for fun, let's go deeper into some other theories around this topic as well. Now let's start with a very scientific theory, which is a neuroscience theory. And although we are not going to cover that in this video because it will become too long and complex, but let me give you a fair idea. And Einstein also spoke about this. So what basically he said that we all have atoms and neurons in our body. Now they have a fixed path to follow. Now the debate is that path predetermined, or is it or does it changes depending on external factors or our own thinking? Does our will can change the patterns of the neurons moving into our body, or is it predetermined like a DNA or a track which is predetermined that this is how it's going to function, or we can change it with our own will? So that is a very I think that was proven in some way from some neuroscience and stuff. As I told you just now, we are not going to cover that in this video. It's a very complex theory, but I just wanted to give you a fair idea of that. So that is neuroscientific way to understand this free will debate. Now moving to more practical theories, there is a very common theory, I think, which you all have heard, which most of the people say that it's all part of God's plan. So I call it's part of all God's plan theory. Now, I think this is the dumbest of all, and I'm not even going to get into it because I think it's just plain dumb. Because it's for people who have basically given up on the real answer, who have left it all on God and saying that everything is pre-written, everything is predetermined, and that they can't do much about the things. So I think let's leave that theory to dumb people and let's move on to a more interesting theory which I like personally, which is the butterfly effect theory. Now, in butterfly effect theory, it's actually based on cause and effect theory, which means that, let me give you an example. I think there is also a very good movie on this topic, and I recommend you to watch it, which is called the butterfly effect. After I watched that movie, it changed my life perspective, that how a small changes, how a small decisions can impact our whole life and everyone's life, in fact. What this movie also tells you that, for example, if a butterfly flaps its wings in one part of the world, it can almost create a tornado in some other part of the world. Now, I think the cause and effect or the butterfly effect theory is the most accessible and is the most practical. Although it's much harder to track than any other theories, but it seems most probable. Let me give you a very real life example. For example, you today didn't take out your car, there would have been less traffic, right? So you had a cause and there was the effect. Traffic was less. Now, because the traffic was less, some person reached their workplace a little bit earlier, maybe even if seconds. Because he reached his workplace a little bit earlier, he was able to get more done work. Maybe not. But that caused you not getting your car out, caused a chain of events. Now from that place, that person reaching his job early, getting more things done, might change the world. You'll say how? It's a very small example. It won't work out, but small things like that can pile up. So let me continue on that example. A few other guys like him got less traffic today, and they have gotten more work done today. And eventually over the time, when this thing piles up and they have done good deal of work, then their company is successful. The company's shares are going up. Now what does that mean? Which means that the whole world is changing in real time, because obviously if share market is going up because of that one stock, then you just not getting your car out in the traffic today has changed so much. Although this is not practical, but this is what cause and effect theory is, or the butterfly effect theory. And if you watch that movie, I think I highly recommend it to you once again. It's called the butterfly effect movie. You can find it online anywhere. This shows you that every small decision you make has a effect some place, has a effect at some other part of the world. But this also raises a very paradoxical question here, which is, does the free will of one person make another person's life predetermined? Let's understand with the example we took just now. For example, if I not taking my car out today in traffic was my own free will, right? But it made another person's life a bit of different, because he reached at a different time at his office than his usual time. He reached a bit early because I didn't take my car out and there was a little bit of less traffic. So his life event changed because of my free will. So this raises a question, that does my free will made his life predetermined? Now that is also a chain of events which we can again continue this whole debate on. But leaving that apart, let's move on to the next theory, which is there is no escaping your own fate theory. Now, there is a very interesting story around this, which philosophers often use to explain this, where a boy was born named Adam with a destiny or predetermined fate that one day he would kill his own younger brother. Now, to prevent that from happening, his parents thought that it would be best to not let them both brothers grow up together. So they left Adam up for adoption as soon as he was born. And years later, when Adam grew up with his adopted parents, not knowing who his real biological parents were or who his real biological brothers and sisters were, he, as fate would have it, he somehow ended up and crossed path with his younger brother and ended up in a fight and unknowingly killed his own blood. Now this story proves that one cannot escape his or her own fate, no matter how much they try to use their free will to prevent it. Now to roughly sum it up, guys, let me give you my point of view on this whole topic. I think that a lot of these determinist people are lazy, and that is the reason they choose to avoid free will, so that it would allow them to not do anything in life and leave everything on chance or up to destiny. And they also try to delude others so that no one holds them accountable, and they have no responsibility since the choices weren't theirs as per them. And so, my heart wants to believe in free will, but my objective mind says determinism. But personally, me as a person, I am an eternal optimist. I would want to believe in free will and that we can make our own and wise choices which can lead us to a successful life. So I think for now that should wrap up our conversation around this free will versus determinism debate. And I think this much information is good enough for starters for this topic and enough for a person to make up their own mind. Also, although I like the ideas and intellectual challenges that these philosophical topics provide, but as a realist and as an entrepreneur, I would like to say that I believe that philosophy is for people who are not meant to do great things in actual world. Because as we all know that actions speak louder than words, and real actions is what get things done. And philosophy is all just about thinking and words. It's good to sharpen your intellect, but you should prioritize putting actions on more important stuff in life. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'll end this episode of Philosophy series. If you learned something, make sure to subscribe for more interesting videos and to share this video with someone who might benefit from this. Also leave a comment below and let me know on which topic you would want the next philosophical episode to be on. And for now, as always, build a life that's worth living.